What's up, Sunday night edition Webs? Are you good? You good, Webs?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
My audio was coming through my computer speakers rather than my headset,
Indeed, indeed.
as does happen.
Indeed. This is the Sunday night edition of The Hustle with the homie Big Webs. Mike Lang, tomorrow is the first day of a very interesting school year, Webs. What say you?
Yeah. Yeah. I am surprised I haven't seen a bingo card yet for anything that could possibly go wrong. If I've missed out on that on social media somewhere and somebody could hit me up, that would be great. Because I feel like it's gonna be a lot.
Oh, it's going to be deep, man. Mad deep. And we'll kind of withhold stuff. This is not a situation where we're trying to ensure that people are like alarmed or triggered or anything like that at all. We're actually going to shoot this show before Monday because we're trying to get people to do pre-mortems before they go into tomorrow morning with an idea of if you haven't considered what could go wrong tomorrow, taking some time and considering that it's 6 o'clock, you can still get yourself a great night's sleep while just doing some very, very small tweaks, Webs, in terms of how things roll. Very quickly, let's do the intros as we usually roll. We're the Intelligent Hoodlums. You can find us at www.theintelligenthoodlums.com or at Trust the Hoodlum on the Twitter. Webs,
The
introduce
Twitters.
yourself.
Hi, I'm Webbs. I am a software developer by day. Uh, my life goal is to be able to do the salmon ladder like on American Ninja Warrior. I was in the classroom for 9 years as a digital learning coach, classroom teacher in elementary and other things. And so now I hang out with Mike and try to do my best to help teachers get the things that they need so that
Facts.
they are a little less stressed.
Big facts. Big facts. And I am Mike Lang. I keep it real in the streets. That's what I do. Now, today's hustle. We're going to talk a little bit about what pre-mortems are and why it's important that we pre-mortem this thing out. Webs, what is a pre-mortem? Kind of give us a rundown of what that means.
So before we talk pre-mortem, I'm going to do a little background knowledge on a post-mortem.
Right.
So a post-mortem is, I think that term originated in the medical field
Yeah.
for like when a patient dies or surgery goes wrong, you kind of figure out, you look back and see where you
Forensic
made
files,
mistakes.
man. Forensic
Forensic.
files.
Um, but that's something that we also do in software development. So when we have a major incident or data compromise or something, we'll look back at, okay, what went wrong? How can we fix this? How can we make sure that it doesn't happen next time? And a pre-mortem is looking at an event or a project or whatever and trying to brainstorm all the different ways that it could go sideways so that you kind of weed out a lot of the obvious causes for the Titanic to go down.
Absolute facts. And it's something that you should definitely do as an instructor. Like, what are the ways that if you do some Doctor Strange stuff before, a lot of times you can catch little pieces of your pedagogy, perhaps that won't reach all your students, that might be offensive. We're in this BLM, looking at people's curriculum and stuff, considering what kind of is your entire curriculum written by white dudes? Well, we may want to go and do pre-mortem work and say, hey, we may want to diversify that hustle a little bit. If your everything that you're doing is kind of favoring one particular mode of learning and not being inclusive of other particular modes of learning, something you could do with just by simply looking through your lesson plans before you deliver lessons and kind of deconstructing those things. Webster, you're going to say something.
Even thinking about the audience that you're sharing to. So something I saw a lot was like, why do we even have to record lessons? Because that's like a big push right now in our local district is making sure teachers record their lessons for playback later. And we've mentioned this several times when we were talking about Canvas. Like, as much as it would be ideal that everyone could attend all at the same time, the reality of the pandemic situation is you may have a parent that has to go to work during the day and the kid is with grandparents or a babysitter or daycare and has no access to a normal school day. Like, it's one thing to require that when you have a kid going to a place to be supervised by an adult, where yeah, you have their full attention, you have all the resources they need right there, but it's a completely different story when you don't know where that kid is going to be.
Or like just the live lesson is such a vestige of the face-to-face classroom, right? So again, there were times where I really benefited from my teacher being there right in front of me. There are other times that held me back as a kid. Like, I don't good. I know what I need to do. Just be quiet. Let me do what I need to do. Have the path set up for me. I can do what I need. And when I need you, just like YouTube, I can come back and see you and say, "Look, I didn't understand this part of what you were talking about." Rather than having a scenario in which everyone is a prisoner of the live lesson. This is an opportunity for you to set forth a path for kids to go down and allow them to use their own whatever schedule they happen to be on to do what you need to do. And that is the most frustrating thing. Where for me at this point is to have this the the oppression of the face to face classroom, you know, leak itself into what could be an opportunity for students to go at either an accelerated pace, a slower pace, whatever pace is conducive to them learning the material the best, rather than being the bullwhip of you have 50 minutes to do this when there's no real reason for that to be the case. If you understand what I'm saying.
High school students, right? We've known for years that high school students function much better when they can sleep later, get more hours of work time. They are night owls. So here's a perfect, now you can't say that the excuse is, oh, well, bus schedules. There's absolutely no reason why you can't adjust a high school student schedule so that they can go at their own pace. And you've said this before, so that a sophomore could graduate at the end of their sophomore year if they were really that advanced. Um, it's just unfortunate, but like there's that part of it. Like we control, we control. There's the, what is it? There's the stuff you can control, the stuff you can influence, and then everything else you just kind of got to let go of. So you can control and influence your own classroom, your own building. Um, Not that it's not important to talk about these larger topics and bring them to the surface. I think they're really important to talk about the opportunities that we have here, and yeah, hopefully that if we say it enough, maybe somebody who makes decisions will listen.
Perhaps. Now, that being the case, again, the premortem is it's just a mechanism that makes sense at this point. At this point, especially for our friends in Clark County who are going to school tomorrow. Harvard Business Review has a great article, a magnificent article. It is great. It's one of my favorite articles that I've read on the subject. It's from 2007. So this is not a brand new idea. This is a 13-year-old article. I actually found articles previous to that. But the pre-mortem situation is great. I'm going to copy this. And Webbs, if you would be as kind as to throw that into the chat, I would definitely
Sure.
appreciate it. We are at a scenario in which we are definitely hoping that teachers have woosah'd themselves into a place of peace tomorrow. But let's think about our users. So your families and your students for tomorrow. How are they going to get to your materials? How are they going to get to you if, talking locally, Canvas implodes upon itself tomorrow? How does one go and contact a teacher? How do ensure that every student is going to see a teacher tomorrow or see you? But let's talk about teachers in general, just you yourself as an instructor. So what are some ways that we can do those things? Is kind of what we're going to talk about this evening. And really, Webbs, I think it's just being mindful that perhaps empathy needs to reign here, and I think a premortem is an empathy tool. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Like I was saying before, it's an opportunity to think about the people that you're trying to serve, and to kind of put yourself in their shoes and walk through their potential workflows, I'd also like to add, like, there is no magical sauce or format to a premortem. It's basically just thinking through like what could go wrong. And I think one of the most basic things we were talking about this earlier was how do you get in contact with your end user? How do you get in contact with parents? How do you get in contact with students? Um, if for some reason Canvas decides to just completely like die, and that was going to be your main method of contact, what mechanisms do you have to just reach out to them and say, hey, something's going wrong, let me get in touch with you in a little bit? Because I think that's kind of a big deal. Being able to just like let them know that you know something is wrong.
Facts. So hopefully most schools have embraced the idea of using a tool like Class Tag or Class Dojo or Blooms, something or Remind that allows you to directly impact or connect with parents. But we know that there's a lot of parents who don't check their emails. There are a lot of parents who have phones that were cut off, especially now, given the last 5 6 months, people have been out of work. Things could have happened. People were forced to move. There's a lot of weird things that could pop off. So, the first thing, Webs, I think, is thinking about centrality. One place that is 100% guaranteed for someone to check. Webs, you're going to say something.
I was going to say that exercise in and of itself is a bit of premortem. So just considering all the reasons why a parent's contact information may not be accurate from what they gave in the spring or whenever they registered, and recognizing that, like, hey, I've tried these modes of contact and they didn't work, and there's probably a reason other than, oh, this parent's just irresponsible. I think it's really easy in times of stress to default to the thinking the absolute worst in people, and that may not be the case. And I think that in and of itself is a premortem. But yes, having things in a central place or having a central point that's like totally reliable is really important.
And hence the idea that your school website should be like ground zero for any communication with parents immediately. Hopefully, you have someone on your campus who's in control of that your website, being able to go and have direct links to teachers. If you're using Google Meets, all the Google Meets for the teachers, so the kid can go directly to see teacher without having to go to Canvas. That's a strategy that we're going to utilize at our school, just in case again the zombie apocalypse pops off. I don't need to go to Canvas to connect to my teacher. I can go right on our school website, click the link, and I'm going to see my teacher immediately. And we can figure out the Canvas angle later on. Webbs, you're going to say something.
So, yeah, another interesting thing that I just thought about related to software development. So, when we have an incident that might take down our infrastructure, so like what our websites run on, usually most companies have a status page that lives somewhere else. So that in the event that all the infrastructure for the company goes down, there is still a place, be that on Twitter or a separate status page. Like there is a something called, I think it's called statuspage.io, that a lot of companies use, where you just update your users on what's happening and that's it while an incident is going on.
So I'm using my class webpage as a hub also for that information. But you will have teachers who don't have web pages. And one of the things I encourage teachers to do is if you're a Google Apps for Education user, you have access to Google Sites. It doesn't have to be something that's 17 pages long. A single page website with just basic information about yourself, here's how you can get in contact with me, et cetera, would work. But if you don't have that, and I'm speaking locally to our local teachers, one of the undersold tools that was rolled out was Clever. And Clever was only kind of like mentioned as this, oh, Clever will let your kids log into Canvas. Well, Clever does a lot of more sexy things than that if you take some time and build it up. And we're going to kind of look at my Clever page now. I'm still adding a bunch of things to it. The other thing, if you're not a specialist teacher in the Clark County School District, you want to get with a specialist teacher because your specialist teacher could be your best friend in this scenario because we see every kid. So if we build a page, every kid is going to be able to see that situation, that scenario. And if you are someone who does not, or you don't feel comfortable building your Clever page up, You may want to bribe one of your specialists to go add a bunch of links and stuff on there so they can get to you, and you just buy them lunch or something and have them go to your specialist's page, because again, that specialist is going to see every kid that's registered in the school will be available there. Web, so what you got?
Another possibility, if you're looking for just an easy mode of communication and you can get it out in the hands of your parents, either via email, like if you know that most of their emails are accurate, share a Google Doc.
Mm.
You don't have to be a web designer. You can just post updates on the Google Doc. You can share Google Meet links in the Google Doc. That's something that most people are relatively familiar with. So if you're just looking for like you know, this is my last ditch effort to try and maintain some sort of status page communication of what's happening and what's going on in real time, because real time is super important. They may not check their emails, but if you have this page that's constantly updating, they may keep that open because they know that's where communication is coming from. If that's all you have, like that's totally fine. There's a chat feature in Google Docs so that if they need to chat real time, they can do that. So that may
Make
be
sure
another
with Google
alternate.
Docs, though, make sure if you're using, I'm going to use Clark County as an example, that that doc is made public, because if it's somebody, if, by default, only our individuals who are Clark County School District users are going to be able to reply or comment on any of those documents. So you're going to have to go and add and massage the permissions in order for that to actually function as a two-way communications tool. So just be mindful of that before you go set that out. But that's also, again, not intimidating at all. It's a Google Doc. You probably are a little bit more experienced with Google Docs. Google Slides, the same deal. Google Sheets, you could do the same deal. So anything that you're comfortable with when that Google Suite is going to work like that very, very easily. But
And I think
go ahead,
that's
Webs.
an that's an important part. An important thing to think about too is what you're doing just for tomorrow is strictly like, hey,
Survival.
I'm just trying to hack something together so that I can have this communication. It doesn't mean it's going to live forever. It doesn't mean it has to be beautiful. It just hack something together so that you have that method of communication, and that line of communication is open.
I think that our goal, everyone's goal for tomorrow, is just to get kids with teachers, right? Just for everybody to see a teacher tomorrow, to be, everyone to kind of start to build that community and whatnot. And I don't necessarily believe that a kid has to log into Canvas to do that, has to log into Google Classroom to do that. They just need to be in front of you, and so you can love on them, and you guys can do what you need to do. And then you can think about what went wrong in terms of kids not being able to log into Canvas or whatever it was later on. But I kind of mentioned the clever deal, and this is my page. You can go and you can play around with this any way that you want. There's a number of ways you can customize this deal. And that's just an announcement. You can build as many announcements as possible. There's a number of my students who've already logged into Clever, given that that was something that was kind of pushed. Kids can log into Clever either with their Google information or with the badge. If your school hand out the Clever badges, they can do that as well. But I need to find my Google Classroom. Click the link below and find your teacher. If they can't, what I built was a spreadsheet with every teacher's Google Classroom and every teacher's Google Meet in it. So as long as you know your teacher's name, you can go and find that information. Boom, click, sends the kid where they need to go. I call my class Virtual Labs. So these are the 4 links the kid's going to need in order to do what I need to do. Our kindergarten students will be using Seesaw. Everyone's going to go through Canvas to get to these other LMSs, and then my website also lives inside there. And then I went just by levels, and what I'm doing right now is acquiring information from teachers that I know that teach in those grade levels, and just building those links directly into the level. Because again, I see every kid, every last one. So if you notice classes up here, it's going to show I have every last kid in that school. Which again, your specialist friend should be your friend, should be your friend, should be your friend, because I can launch all that stuff. You can build those links inside there, whatever. If you don't know how to do this, I'm going to give you a brief 3-minute tutorial, and you're going to be a master at Clever in 3 minutes. All right. If you go to your page, if you go to your page at the top, it's going to say your page, and it's going to say your first initial and your last name, but you can edit that any way you want by just clicking inside there and making it what you want. As long as you have 35 maximum characters, you can make whatever announcements you need to make up there as well. The add button gives you the ability to make categories first. So if you want to go in, let's say, art links. Great, if you're an art
And
teacher.
that's basically just like a folder, right? It's a way of
Yep.
organizing things. By the way, Kelly says, shout out to specialists.
Oh, indeed,
And
without
hi,
question.
Kelly, and hi, Heidi, who are watching.
You could throw your stuff in there. You can drag things in here. Wonderful. I'm going to get rid of that. Die category thing. Delete. Also PDFs. So if there was a set of instructions that you want to actually have kids out watching or reading or whatever, you could do that. Any links are from any website. This is how I built my website inside there. You just paste the link, give it a title. Tell it what category you want it to live in. Upload a custom icon. I'm just going to use the Google Meet one for right now. Click it, add link. Good to go. All right, if I look into kindergarten, Mr. Lang's website is there. I want to get rid of it. Edit, delete link, delete. So any website the kid is going to have to, your personal website, the school's website, whatever, you can build a link in there very, very quickly for students to access. In addition, you have all the apps that are inside of here. And so again, if you're using Pear Deck with your kids, great, Pear Deck, you just install it. It's going to say what I need. It's going to show all those kids stuff. You go, okay, whatever, allow. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bang. I'm going to go back to my library.
I'm assuming you've read those permissions before.
Yeah, I'm going to delete it anyway. I'm not a Pear Deck person. I'm not a Pear Deck fan, really, to tell you the truth. That'll give you the permissions. Every kid will be allowed in there. Clever will create the accounts and whatnot. You don't have to worry about that stuff at all. If you want to delete it, you can come back in here and delete any of these, any of the apps that are there. There are lots of people who are going to want to use Imagine Math and Lexia and all that wonderful stuff. If the kid is logged into Clever, you can go to your class and you can force that link open on their inside their Clever instance. So if a kid, your kindergarten friends, for example, who are again functionally illiterate, I just want to take them a certain place. That's how we can take them a certain place without them having to type anything or do anything like that. And pretty much, if you just looked at that situation, you would be a Clever master. Your analytics are going to show you every last one of your kids and what they've logged into. The library is going to show you all of the stuff that you have access to in your classes. If specialists, we're going to have everyone's class. But if you're a classroom teacher, you're only going to have one class, just those 25, 30, 35, 40, God forbid, 45 students in that class that you're responsible for.
So it doesn't split it up according to gradebook like Canvas did?
It will, yeah, it's going to integrate with your ICS. So you'll have
But it's so what, like when Canvas generated classes for elementary teachers, you generated one separate class for every subject.
Speaking and linking, et cetera, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So it'll be the same deal, but all you need to do is choose one of those classes to do what you need to do. And again, the announcements thing is really kind of cool because you can go in and edit those announcements the way that you would need to. If you need to go, so there are a couple drawbacks to Clever. First, in announcements, you can't actually put URLs inside of it. You can't link actual links in there, which kind of blows. That sucks big time. Second of all, you notice that I've got Google Classroom in each one of those. You can't actually copy it. You have to go and make a link. So if you did it like I did it with, I'm doing by grade level, you would have to go and copy the link to Google Classroom 5 times if you're going to do it 5 different places. It kind of blows. So if I wanted to move Google Canvas, for example, I could move it, but Canvas disappears now from my Zero Nautical tools here. I can't just drag them back and forth. But if I wanted another Canvas instance, I would have to go edit it, and they're not going to let me remove it. Got the way their webs. Open the screen. I could go and I could duplicate that, not duplicate it, but manually create another Canvas button for each one of these if I wanted to, but I would have to manually do so, which really sucks. But other than that, it's a convenient tool, especially if you have to teach kindergarten students, because I think those are going to be kindergarten kids and kids who've never been to school before, whether they be kindergartners, first graders, kids from out of state, etc., that have no idea how any of this stuff works. They have no idea who you are. I think those kids are going to be the kids who you really need to ensure have a way to just get with you as quickly as possible. Webs.
So going back to the pre-mortem idea and thinking through like, okay, so, come 8:05, your kids are supposed to report to your classroom. Think through what that looks like. So, are you expecting that they can log into Clever? Are they going directly to Canvas? Have you given them those directions anywhere? How do they know where they're supposed to show up to? Maybe that was communicated at the school level. There could be answers to these questions, but they're questions that we can't answer for you. But I think that is definitely step one, is just how do you get the kids in front of you when school is supposed to start so that they actually all know where they are. The next thing I would think of is if a kid can't figure out where you are, just like if we were physically going to school, where do they go? So if I am a kid who's trying to figure out where to go, like, do I call the school? Is there a website I go to? Like, what is that? What does that flow look like? And is that flow being communicated out to the families at your school? Or even just, again, thinking about what can you control? What can you influence? Worry about your class. So for your class, does your class know what's going on? Does your class know where they're supposed to go? Um, have you communicated that out? And if they get lost, where do they go?
Facts. And so I think that the magic piece here is digital literacy. And that is one thing that we're taking for granted with a lot of our families, that they understand how the internet works. They understand symbols that happen to be on websites. They understand they can read English. They can read English in a technical manner as well. So again, one of the most hilarious parts, Alfie Cohn. If you don't follow Alfie Cohn on Twitter, do yourself a favor and do that. Great, he's a great writer, but he's married to a neurosurgeon. All right, and so he has, in one of his books, he has a very cool story in which he talks about the fact that his wife doesn't spell very well, but she's a neurosurgeon. So the idea of intelligence being this, like, oh, you're really smart, which means X, is like solely something that doesn't exist, right? There are holes in everyone's expertise. And if you are a teacher and you speak teacherese to somebody, they're not going to understand you, not because they're not intelligent, just because they're not a teacher. Same thing for someone reading a contract who just happens to be a probate lawyer or a contractual law lawyer. I may be able to understand the words, but I may not be able to understand the meaning behind the words. And so a lot of what I saw the last 2 weeks was the assumptions that a parent was able to decipher what this word means in the context of a workflow on the internet, a workflow in terms of schooling, being able to follow breadcrumbs from one idea to the next, be able to interpret an infographic. There was a very confusing infographic that was put out by the district, our district, that, I mean, I was like, dude, this doesn't make any. I know to click links in order to follow the rabbit hole. But if I didn't understand that underlying text that perhaps was a different color than the rest of the text meant that I need to click this to go to another place, that would be a problem. So there's a lot of unfortunateness around uh, how we're expecting people. We're just inferring that because this person is a English language speaker, rather, they are also someone who's versed in how the internet works. And so I think we need to go in pre-mortem that all the way to the beginning, where if I've never used the internet before, how can you make it so simple for me to go and access information for my student? Webs.
Education concepts. So, a parent friend of mine had asked, like, what's the difference between Clever and Canvas? What is this instructure thing everyone is talking about? So we keep using the term Canvas, and we know we're talking about an LMS, a learning management system, that students will log into to get their content. Some students, not all students. However, when you go to the website, it's something like instructure.ccsd.net for our local school
Other way
district,
around.
right? Oh,
ccsd.instructor.net.
c.instructure.net. Okay.
Yep.
So why would a parent associate Instructure with Canvas? People keep saying Canvas. What is this Instructure thing? And then you throw Clever into the mix. It's like, why would anyone know that? It hasn't been really talked about or rolled out anywhere. It's just word of mouth. If you're in the right social media groups, if you happen to have a teacher friend, whatever the case is. And then another thing that came up, there's a whole conversation around FERPA right now. So the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act and recording things. A question that came up from someone is what's the difference between live recording with students in front of you or even screen capture, screencast recordings with students versus having students record something on a tool like Flipgrid or having them create their own videos. Like, what is the difference between those two things? Um, would you like to speak to that, Mike?
Again, and so there's another conversation to have as well in terms of individuals who are not 21st century pedagogically informed, making assumptions about things they don't understand. I'm gonna go. Shout out to Nas. King's Disease came out Friday. Shout outs if you have not listened to that album, give it a spin or two. Um, but he's a very very famous lyric, and a lyric that's close to my heart. People hate what they can't understand, fear what they can't conquer, and that's kind of what this is, right? We have a lot of people who don't understand what we're doing, and so any little no, you go don't do that, and you're like, dude, we're not. This is something we've been doing forever. It's also something that's locked down. No one else is going to see this information. And a tool like Flipgrid is a great tool for instruction because again, first of all, it's very very locked down, extremely locked down in terms of you have to allow certain email domains to be have access for it. You can cut down or you can cut off the ability for students to download videos in the first place. But I also think, Webbs, that unfortunately there's this very high bar of security in quotation marks, and you're like, this is ridiculous. All right, nothing stops me from anywhere, way, shape, or form of taking my phone out of my pocket and recording the screen as things pop off. So a Flipgrid or whatever, a basic lesson, my teacher teaching a class, whatever. Whether I'm asynchronously Google meeting, whether I'm in a Google Meet with the rest of my class or whatever, I can take the video camera that's in my pocket and record my entire screen. There's nothing you can do about that. If you want to talk about security as well in terms of the video, what stops me from going to a physical classroom when we return back face to face, right, and recording just walking around recording every student that's in the deal and posting that on Snapchat or on whatever, etc.
So, two things about that. One, I think another reason Flipgrid is different, or tools like Flipgrid are different, is the student is recording themselves, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
presumably, a parent should be there saying, "Oh yes, you should be recording," or "No, you should not," and that those permissions should already be known. And the reason, and you're not wrong. Like, it absolutely could be that a student holds up a camera and decides to record and whatever. However, here's where I give a little pushback to that. If we start with the slippery slope, well, it's not even worth trying if this one
I'm not
particular
saying it's
compromise
not
can
worth trying.
happen.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is trying to 100% prove things in order for them to be used in education. Because there's always, as an independent actor, if there's a way to break a rule, there's a way to break the rule. There's nothing that's
Well,
100% unbreakable.
this goes back to the whole there should be pre-mortems around like workflows as well as tools. And at some point, you have to decide if you're willing to accept that risk, if you're going to try to do something to mitigate that risk. I think parents should have the right to decide, like, should my teacher, because I feel like the teacher and the school district are also different entities than a rogue, bad actor who decides that they're going to record the screen and then do whatever with that footage. So I think there is a sense of due diligence that has to be done by adult entities that aren't,
Oh, I'm
random rogue perpetrators.
totally factual. What I'm saying is, when you bring up a tool like Flipgrid and someone says, "Oh my God, no, we can't use Flipgrid," and you're like, "Why can't we use Flipgrid?" Because they might use it to record something that they're not supposed to record, and you're like, "Okay, well, all right." So why, if the speed limit consistently in the United States is 45 miles an hour, why do we make cars that can go 200 miles an hour? Then, like, if you're going to say this is the narrow space that we're going to inhabit, right? We're not going to record videos at all. No video, okay? Because there might be evil things kid can do with a video because, I don't know. When you start to deal with, when everything starts to be predicated on a feeling of mistrust and distrust, then you start you lose me in a lot of ways because a lot of the things that I've heard the last 2 weeks is the kids are going to do this, and you're like, okay, like I don't think most of the kids are going to do that. I think most of the students are going to say, "Hey, this was an exciting lesson. You give me an opportunity to shoot a video to introduce myself to my classmates, and we're to keep it moving." I think only there's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of human beings who are bad actors because of some sociopathic nature in which they're like, "Hey, I'm just going to do mean things because I'm a mean person." I
I
think
mean,
that most
I
people are.
agree with you, but like going back to the Flipgrid example, can't you set it so that the teacher has to approve the videos that get posted and shared?
You can moderate it. You can stop it from
Yeah,
being downloaded.
yeah.
You could suspend, essentially kick kids out of your instant. There's a lot of things you can do, but I think there's a lot of people who are speaking on a tool that have no idea how the tool actually works. It's just no, don't use that, and you're like, okay, well, fam, like really, like you know, I think there's way too. Microsoft before Microsoft bought it, it was kind of a Wild Wild West tool. Like you could go and pop in and pop out and do anything you need to. Microsoft locked that bad boy down deep.
I will say, for as much as I hate certain things about Microsoft, they do know security relatively well.
They locked it down deep. And I mean,
Yeah.
again, Flipgrid is one of my Flipgrid to me is a tool that you cannot do distance learning without because it's secure video creation that lives in a spot that is limited to just your class or just the individuals that you place in your class. Kids can have conversations there safely, and you're using a medium that every kid is going to want to use to express themselves. And a medium that, if you're talking college and career readiness, you have to be versed on how to shoot video. That is
I
not
will
an
say
optional
too,
skill. Go ahead,
I
Wes.
will say too, as much as we would love to 100% prevent kids from, screen recording video or prevent them from getting screenshots or whatever, that's going to be a real life risk that it's going to be really difficult to mitigate entirely. But figuring out how to deal with it if it happens, I think is a life skill. Because the fact is, like, that will happen as an adult too, and you have to figure out how to deal with it, unfortunately. um I get it if, like, there are parents who want to not have their kids do any sort of recording up to a certain age and then give them the choice of whether they want to record or not. It kind of sucks because it's like you're missing out on some good skills there, but ultimately, like, that I think is it's up to the parent. And there are lots of other ways you can do podcasting. You can still do the traditional, like, hey, I'm going to write an essay type thing. So yeah, like, I don't think it's a completely mitigatable risk at all, but I don't I think it is, I agree, such a small one that I don't think it's worth completely eliminating a tool for everybody because there may be a couple bad actors that take advantage of it.
Well, and that goes back to the whole pre-mortem giving people choices. So if there's not simply this is the one way that you're gonna be successful. If you want to shoot a video, great. If you want to record some sound, great. If you want to go and write an essay, if that's your thing, and you like, hey, I just want to write this stuff down, Mr. Lang, got knock yourself out. But I think that
Hmm.
part of it is, again, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, looking at your lesson and saying there need to be multiple paths to success that a student can choose that is comfortable for them, that still allows them to demonstrate mastery. And if you're solely looking from one vantage point through one lens, that's kind of problematic to me because there are other things that students are going to be have been that the kids are going to have been bringing certain skills to the table as well. If you say this is the only thing that I'm going to accept as mastery, you have now destroyed my previous knowledge. You know you've minimized it to such an extent that perhaps I don't even want to deal with you. You're saying that I can't. I like to make TikTok videos. That's something that I've been doing for the last 5 months. I really got good at it. Great. How can we integrate that into your workflow where you could go demonstrate your math concepts through TikTok? There's a couple teachers who have gotten TikTok crazy over the last 5 or 6 months. If you told them they couldn't use the skills they've learned from editing in TikTok in their classroom, well, how fair is that?
I think too, going back to, and I feel like I harp on this a lot, but the Octalysis gamification, people want to be able to customize things and pick their own path. Going back to Daniel Pink's Drive, People want autonomy. That's something that drives people, is that I have autonomy to make my own choices, to choose my own path. Um, those are the things that are going to keep students engaged and at that higher level of Schlechty's level of engagement.
I think that is it, right? Again, it's the relevance. If you make things, if you start making decisions that don't allow me to bring my own relevance to the table, then I think you've lost me. And I think that's something that the first week, the first 2 weeks, that getting to know students, taking surveys, this is what I do, this is what I like, and not to say you're going to customize it so the kid does everything he likes or she likes all the time, but ensuring that again the kid has an opportunity to demonstrate mastery through the lens that they perhaps favor. I don't think it's asking too much, in my opinion.
I will say too, going back to the pre-mortem idea, think about the tools that you'll use and do a pre-mortem on the settings. So who has access to this? Is it everyone I want to have access to it? Is there anyone who has access to it that I wouldn't want to have access to it? Making sure that if your Google Doc needs to be public facing, if you're using security through obscurity where someone has to find the link, people troll the internet for those things. So making sure that you're not sharing, information about students specifically, but just general, hey, here's the connection for today or something like that. Share the password in a different channel if you need to share a password for something. But really doing a premortem on the settings on the tools that you're using as well, so that what you're getting yourself into. Because ultimately, it depends on you. It depends on your situation.
And that kind of brings us to like leading from behind. And this is, if you had, I'm not a leader. I've never been a leader. It's not something, a term that I use to respond.
I mean, I disagree with that, but sure.
Yeah, I don't, that's not one of my things. Shout out to Charles Bukowski. His birthday was last week. The homie, RIP. I'm a Bukowski type leader. I'm not asking you to follow me if you want to go into the jungle or whatever. That's cool, but I'm not. That's not how I get down. But leading from behind is a great strategy to kind of look at premortems through another lens, or look at your leadership style as well. Kind of the first paragraph of this blog post refers to Nelson Mandela, where he talks about shepherds and the fact that they stay behind the flock and not in front of them. And I think that's a mad dope look at leadership. You think of leadership, in a Western sense, as the person goes in front and whatnot. But there's a lot of credence to this idea. And I'm not going to go and read the entire article. If you're not somebody who listens to the Harvard Business Review's podcast, this is a great podcast to follow. If you're not someone who checks out the Harvard Business Review often, this is a place I go just for weird things to challenge my assumptions about the world. I think as educators, we should be looking outside of education for ideas, for concepts, for innovative thoughts that will keep us kind of on our A game and not looking. I think we get a little stale talking to other teachers. Not to say that talking to other teachers is bad, but I think there's a lot of people who are doing some very interesting work on that can be applied to education to make our lives a little bit more dynamic in the way that we reach our students as well. But this and the idea that leading from behind leads to innovation in this contract between companies and employees. If you just uh, exchange the words teachers and students, this becomes very, very salient for the time being, right? And so this is an article that, it's very short. It's only a couple paragraphs. Go through, read it. Websy, you drop that inside the our chat.
Yep.
So it's a great article to read. I read this maybe once or twice a week. Just kind of come down. It's kind of there's a couple like there are some there are a lot of I have a lot of articles I continue to refer to when I get kind of down or I need some inspiration. This is one, as well as that pre-mortems, when I need to just challenge myself to say, you think this is going this lesson is going to be dynamite, let's go check that out again and just make sure that there's no angle we haven't kind of dealt with as well. And given that, the recording deal, Webs, the idea of recording, when I know in our normal our current district or our local district, the point, looking at the law and the intent of the law, rather than the actual law. So if you kind of looked at the what the point of the recording the synchronous lessons was, it was to ensure that students that were not there present in real time did not fall behind, essentially, right? So if we took that into a pre-mortem and said, what if we taught the class like no kid was there and thought on demand the entire time rather than having to think about recording the lessons? As for me personally, I'm not recording squat. There's no live lessons that I'm going to record at all. First and foremost, I want kids to be comfortable. I think having the recording thing on there just kind of weirds people out. It makes people perhaps not share that might share otherwise.
Actually, that's
Wait, wait.
something I hadn't really thought about. Like when I moved into software development, it became a thing to record remote meetings. And when I first started like having that as an experience, it was very uncomfortable. I was not comfortable sharing my thoughts, and I was constantly thinking about like, is this a thing that I'm okay with being recorded? Is this a thing I'm okay with being recorded? I mean, clearly I've gotten over that, but it took some time. I hadn't really thought about that until just now
It's
when
a
you brought it up.
mad weird thing because
It
if
is a
you
weird thing to get
if you're
recorded,
recorded,
especially as a kid.
that lives forever, right? In theory, right?
Mhm.
That recording is going to be
Yeah.
seen by some other person who might make some generalizations about you, that might take part of what you recorded and say certain things, or misinterpret what you said, and you're not going to be there to defend what you know. No, that's not actually what I meant. I meant this. This is what I was talking about.
Memeing.
Yeah,
Like
my thing would
the
be
memeing thing. Like
straight up and down. Don't record squat. Pre-record.
unfortunately, especially middle schoolers and high schoolers are vicious humans.
Facts.
Like
Like the worst times of your life are probably
yeah.
your middle school time, right? Like, I've got a scenario in which someone else is going to watch that, and nothing stops me from taking my phone and recording that and throwing it in. You know what I'm saying? I would rather, as teacher, if a kid records me and makes fun of me or whatever, that's part of my job. It's not
Right.
big of a deal. But I would much rather have my students shielded from the probability or possibility that they would be their words would be misinterpreted, that a question they might ask might have someone ridicule them later on, like, oh my God, why didn't Bob know what 3 plus 3 was, and he asked it on the air, and now that kid gets some email from another the student later on about, hey, you're not the smartest kid in our class. I just think we can mitigate that by having lots of synchronous lessons that are not recorded at all. The spirit of the law was, I just need to make sure that a student that does not have access to that live lesson gets access to the instruction.
To be clear, this is not an actual law, just a general rule
Yes.
that was yeah.
So, what I thought about was, instead of, even if you didn't want to create another workflow in which you record your lessons before, you use your reflection time at the end of your day to simply record a 10-minute, this is what happened today video. So K5, you're teaching all the subjects. Here's a 10-minute, this is exactly what happened. If you missed August 24th, this is what we did. Kind of a highlight tape. Boom, 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 boom. You'll find the links to all the activities underneath this video. There you go. Mom, dad, sister, brother, cousin. This is exactly what we did. I've got the links there. Walk through it in my virtual office hours start at 3. So if you have an issue or whatever, send me an email or mine or whatever and do what you need to do. Rather than potentially traumatize some kid in a live lesson with, this is going to be recorded. Not because even the way they put it out, it's kind of very legal, right? I'm recording this so I don't get into legal trouble later on, and it's not for your benefit; it's for my benefit. That if I say anything during this live lesson or whatever, perhaps some things go down. I'm utilizing the live lesson as a get to know you, as a check in, etc. Having kids have their own path, and again, that choice thing. Here's the path. You can go at the pace that you want, but our live lessons are going to be for questions. It's going to be for games that we're going to play. It's for virtual high fives, virtual hugs. And then here's the lesson that you guys are going to do today. Go, God bless you. Do what you need to do. But I think we potentially could traumatize a lot of people with we're recording this. Oh my God, Mr. Lang has to read this long, these 3 sentence long. We're recording this. Please refrain from taking screenshots and this and that. You know, I don't know. What do you think? What say you, Webbs?
No, I totally agree with you. And Heidi also said in the chat, great point, Mike. I feel like that's been a topic of conversation over the summer is the type of trauma that we unintentionally inflict on students. That conversation is around, you know, Black, Indigenous, and students of color. But it doesn't mean that we can't have other tools that inflict new traumas on students. So I totally agree with you. And I wonder if this is, if the powers that be, the administrators in an organization had this conversation before and involved classroom teachers in that conversation, maybe this is something that would have come up like, hey, we could be inflicting trauma on students and make them even less likely to participate in distance learning by inflicting this whole recording thing on them.
There's a number of sessions I've done for third parties, this summer in which we recorded them and we had to go read that long, legalese types. These are, a couple Fortune 500 companies I did some work with. And we had to go and read them. We were being recorded, whatever. I try to make it funny, like smile, you're on candid camera, you're being recorded, etc. But I noticed again that people didn't turn their cameras on. The chat was very flat. No one wanted their voice recorded on that video. And these were adults. These were adult learners. This was all PD were doing for adult learners to learn how to use the iPads and a couple other tools. And it marked me. It really piqued my interest in terms of these are adults who perhaps didn't want someone else to know what they didn't know, so they refrained from asking questions. So that's a damage right here, right? And if I am now going to a task that I'm unprepared for because a question I could have asked, I was either afraid to ask, ashamed to ask. I thought about the repercussions of it, so I'm not going to do that. And again, I think these were grown adults, a lot of them college professors, high school teachers, etc., who refrain from answering questions, refrain from chatting, refrain from contributing to conversation because I'm going to say very, very, very openly, perhaps there was the opportunity to be ridiculed or have that video level. Where do I know? As the kid, we don't explain to the kid where that video is going either, or to families. We haven't told families where those videos are being posted. There was no as we record right now, there is no place that I was told by anyone that this video had to live and for how long. Does that video have to live there forever? Is it for
And
60
going
days?
back to the controls aspect of it, like what if someone one of the top security like compromises is poorly configured security controls. So like that's where a lot of compromises come from. So who's to say that someone forgets to flip a switch and now anyone can download that video?
So the Google Meets by default end up in your Google Drive. So there's going to be a scenario in which only someone who would be a CCSD in theory would be able to watch those. But again, there's nothing that says I
But
rip
let me
video.
let me float this scenario by you.
Go ahead.
I create a separate folder so that they're all,
Oh,
grouped
and one,
together.
yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
friend of mine wants to view a lesson that I taught, so I share that, but change the permissions such that now anyone on the internet can see that because I didn't realize what I was doing, or I was going through the workflow fast and didn't realize I clicked this button and not that button. Like it's amazing how quickly it can happen.
I mean, even if, there's always a third party tool that can rip a video.
That too, yeah.
So I mean, it's
I've
even if
seen it
you
shared in social media,
if
so
you
so
want
many
to,
places.
what I'm saying, if you want to lock something down, okay, great. There's someone who's thought about how to unlock what you locked down. That's just the nature
Yeah.
of how things work. So there's nothing that's going to be secure in that
uh,
no one is going to
Not
go on it.
100% secure.
And,
Security is never an on or off switch. It's always a compromise of a continuum.
and I'm going to tell you something that I did today because I was too lazy to ask a teacher to give me access to their video. I simply put their Google Meet video in the center of my screen. I went to my screen recorder. I recorded the video right off my screen. I hit the play button and recorded the entire video. We rocked and roll. Now I have a copy of that video to do what I need to do. Now I'm not going to go and share it all over the willy nilly, but if I thought of that and that's just in the spur of the moment, I need to get this video off this thing, and I don't know what this lady's doing on a Sunday. I'm assuming that they're going to, especially high school and middle school kids, are going to say, "There's a way I can get this video off of here and send it to where I need it to be sent." So,
Yep.
my thing again would be, don't record the kids at all. Either do it on demand in which you are teaching the lesson with no kids there, or some kind of retrospective kind of, here's the highlights of today's class, boom 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 boom, and here's the resources that goes there. But I am not comfortable recording any students at this point. But everyone's going to make their own decision as to what that looks like. I am not comfortable with it because I can only imagine how hurt I would be as a parent if I would my kid would have come crying in my bedroom because some kid sent him an email about how what the question he asked at minute 42 or whatever was stupid. And now this
Also, I feel
person's
like from the perspective of a teacher with a lot going on, it's far easier to do either the reflection or record something completely on demand and asynchronous than trying to juggle who's allowed to be on camera, who's not allowed to be on camera. Like you said, what if that, someone gets ridiculed for a question that they asked, or trying to juggle the multiple screens, multiple Zoom meets, recording this one, not recording that one. What if I record the wrong one and then they don't have the lesson? And maybe I'm going to try to use a screencast tool, but then that crashes or whatever. Like, I think even though it may be a little bit more work, it might seem like a little bit more work on the surface. I think it would be a much more reliable workflow to either do the recap at the end of the day or to do completely asynchronous on-demand lessons.
cognitive
And
overload.
Elizabeth says, I agree.
Cognitive overload is a thing, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
So you're not going to be thinking about all these things at one time. Here's one Google Meet. Here's the other Google Meet. I'm gonna set this one up in advance, and this one. Then I'm gonna move it. So way too many things going on, fam.
This is a perfect example. The things that Mike does on his side for us to broadcast this, because we broadcast it to Facebook, to YouTube, and to Twitter, and it all goes to our website as well. There are a bunch of things that he's doing on his side that I have other things that I'm doing on. It takes two of us to be able to do all of this. So for a teacher to try to be this media conglomerate, running all these pressing buttons and doing all these, and trying to teach a lesson, and I think Heidi is, yeah, we need to keep our time with our students safe for them. That's super important. And you need to be in the right headspace as the teacher to be able to focus on your students and their learning and connecting with them and their social emotional well-being. You don't need to be over here like freaking you're running a TV studio or some
But
nonsense.
that also brings back one of the premortems you need to do is what tech do you have and what can it do?
And what are you comfortable with?
But
You may need
if
to expand those skills, but right now, in this moment, for tomorrow,
but
what are you comfortable
but
using?
not only that, what can your piece of technology actually do? So
What do you mean by that?
if you're teaching off of a Chromebook, you have some limitations that if you're not teaching on a Chromebook, you might not have. For
Mm-hmm.
example, your specs. So there are certain things that as a teacher in this new age you need to be comfortable with, and that's looking at the specs for your device. What
Specifications.
can it actually handle, and what can it not handle? So
Mm-hmm.
right now, Webbs, you're on a MacBook Pro with 32 gigs of RAM, brand
Correct.
new, fresh out the box, couple months
Yep.
old. All right.
Yep.
I'm on an iMac, a 27-inch iMac with 5K display. Like we have Cadillac devices that we're running on, right? I am not worried about running anything. I can run whatever I want. Now your Chromebook, if you're teaching off a Chromebook, has 4 gigs of RAM. All right, it has the if we want to
By the
do
way, gigs are gigabytes and RAM is random access memory. So
and
it's if I'm switching, if I have a bunch of tabs open, if I have multiple programs running, that's the memory I'm going to get to quickly to make quick things
think
happen.
about your engine, right? Your engine. So the engine for your device, 4 gigs of engine, and that and the power of that engine, just like Webbs is saying, it's being partitioned out to run certain things. All right. So the more things you have going on, the more that engine is taxed, the more likely that something bad is going to happen. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are teaching off of a Chromebook, and again, the reason why Chromebooks were attractive to schools is because they're cheap, not because they're dynamic devices. It has nothing to do with performance. This is a lawnmower motor that you cannot tax very, very much. If your students also have lawnmower motors in their devices, that's something else to think about. Can I go and have them on a Google Meet while they're opening a Google slide, while they're looking at this and that and this and this and that, and expect them to be able to do that dynamically? No, you probably can't. And so one of the things that we kind of looked at the last time we were doing this, teachers were like, well, the kid, he had his camera off. Well, turning your camera off is a way to save bandwidth and make sure that your device is going to be somewhat able to do certain things. So if I were you and I knew my kids are working on Chromebooks, that's one of the things I would say. When we first start, everyone's wave hello, hey, okay, now turn your cameras off, fam. Keep them.
Also, bandwidth. You don't know what kind of bandwidth they're working. Are they sitting in the parking lot of the library trying to connect? Are they on the free Cox 25 megabits per second along with their other 4 siblings and their parents are trying to work remotely? Like, you don't know how much bandwidth is being used, and turning off your camera is one way to conserve bandwidth. Like, if your audio and video start getting all skippy, like, turn off your camera. That's going to save you a whole bunch. I live with one other person and we are like a super multi-device household. So we have as much bandwidth and as many gigabytes transferred as you can possibly have because that's the kind of house that we are. Not everyone has that. Like
Facts.
not every teacher even has that. So
Facts.
that's something to consider too is like as the teacher you kind of have to get to know what is your house capable of managing? How many devices can you have? How many megabits per second are you capable
But
of sending back and forth, and how many other people in your household are using that bandwidth at the same time?
But that pushes back to why the on-demand teaching is far a better strategy for this than if a kid is competing with other people in the household right now. Let me wait until 2 o'clock to get my work done, where I can go into I can just get everything done the way I need to, and we're good to go. Rather than competing with Netflix, Xbox, my 3 siblings, everyone's on at the same time. I can't see anything. I get frustrated. Go ahead, Webs.
Or wait until everybody goes to bed. If you're a high school and a night owl, like heard so much criticism of students who get their assignments done at 10 and 11 at night. And I don't understand why, aside from you're functioning different than most of the world does, because that's actually kind of smart. Like there are generally going to be less people on the internet as a whole later at night in your area
Also,
because most people are on during the day.
chronotypes are a thing. All right, I am a
Hmm.
night owl person. I will stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning when I have like when I'm allowed in the summer to do what I need to do. 1 or 2, 3 in the morning, take a quick nap, wake up at 5:30, drink some coffee, go back to sleep until 10, 11 o'clock. Get up, start my day at 11 o'clock.
And I think that chronotype gets a bad rap. It gets criticized as people who are lazy because they're up late and they sleep in all day. Well, if you're functioning the same number of hours as everyone else, then I think we need to be aware of our biases and just chuck those right in the bin. People who function at night are just as productive and get their stuff done as anyone else does. Just because they're not doing it at the same time as you are doesn't mean they're lazy people.
Uh,
So I would encourage any teacher to like check their own biases on that if you're criticizing kids who are doing their work at night.
but
Maybe
also
they're watching their siblings during the day and they don't have time to do it during the day.
And also another, we shout out Dan Pink a lot. I mean, got the opportunity to meet him in Orlando a couple years back. Great writer. He lives in DC, so shout out to the hometown. But also a scenario. His last book is called When, and it talks about time. And
WHEN, not WIN.
one of the dope stories he tells is about Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton, not Isaac Newton. Uh, Shucks, Wizard of Westwood. Um,
Wait, not Thomas Edison.
Thomas
The
Edison.
other guy.
Thomas Edison.
Wait, oh, it was Thomas Edison. I thought
No,
it was Tesla.
no.
Go ahead.
That Tesla was his rival, but Thomas Edison was a night owl. He went in to work at 11 p.m., did his work and whatnot. He talks about a lot of people who were owls like myself. And again, there are people who are highly productive who my body does not like 7 o'clock meetings, fam. I don't like that. It doesn't work for me. But if you say the meeting's going to be at noon, I'm up and awake and we can do what we need to do, and my brain's going to be firing. One of the things I have to do my job well now is I have to drink tons of coffee. If for me to be able to be functional at 7:10, tons of coffee. Like I literally go through 2 or 3 of these a day. 48 ounces, 50 ounces of coffee in order to make sure that my brain is sharp. And it's just something I have to do. It's something that I have used as a coping mechanism. But if everything's going to be asynchronous on demand in the first place, why would we have a scenario in which you're trying to force people into these niches just because this is how it always has been? And that's Webs is what I'm the most concerned about after this deal, because I think people are going to have a negative reactions to how things work. Things aren't going to go very well, and people are going to blame it on the technology and the way things that we had to do, and we're going to go back to this archetype of, oh, we're going to have people face to face, and we're going to sit there and we're going to control people and make people comply, and right now, rather than utilizing the tools that are readily available. You've got Apple, you've got Google, you've got Twitter, all these people who said we're going to go just to remote until next year. Now, these are people who make quite a lot more money than teachers will ever make, right? Companies that are far higher valued than any school district in the country, who are saying the tools that are currently available to us give us a certain superpower to make sure that our employees are safe. And again, I'm going to use you as an example. There are meetings that you have to take right during the day, but there's
Hmm.
also a situation where you have a lot of freedom during your day to schedule things and move things around and do what. But why aren't we also giving people that opportunity?
I don't know. I have no idea.
So I'm confused about the whole thing. But I'm just in terms of tomorrow, like it's almost 8 o'clock, 45 minutes till. I'm gonna be up for forever. But if you're looking for a scenario for the first day, my thing is like don't complicate the hustle. Get kids with you, laugh and joke, sing some songs, play some videos, do dance around and stuff. But like I've heard some teachers, we're going to start academics on the second day. That's messed up, bro. That's
You
messed up.
wouldn't do that during a normal year. I would hope not anyway. Why are you doing it during now times? Do it during the after times.
It's messed up because if an administrator said they were going to come and observe you the second day, you would say how unfair that was. So leave the little kids alone. That just like keep it in 100. Leave the little kids alone.
Going back to the simplicity thing, if you look up parent contact information in something like Infinite Campus or some other student information service, highly recommend having an offline copy so that if your internet goes out, we have a local internet provider around here who's doing work in some neighborhoods and cutting off internet entirely to some people on the first day of remote learning for school. I don't know why, but whatever. So have those tools offline as well, so that if you need to reach out, either send a group email or maybe I don't know, post in your whatever your web page is or wherever your status page is going to be. You can do it from your device. If you have the ability to have a hotspot of some kind, highly recommend like making sure that's charged up and ready to go just in case you need to fall back on it. Um,
I mean,
yeah,
just keep it mad simple and don't beat
yeah.
yourself up.
Mm-mm.
Also, do a retro with your stuff after the first day and just say,
Yep.
these are the things that worked, these are the things that didn't work, and tomorrow, this is how we're going to be better. And that there's no shame in that. I got a bad rap for doing that with myself. In my lesson plans, I have a reflection tab in my lesson plans. And I had an administrator a couple years back look at it and was like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, because I want to look at this lesson a year from now and say, this is the stuff that I jacked up and this is how I'm going to make it better. There's no shame in failure. Like literally, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. Learn from the loss and keep it 100 with yourself, and don't make up excuses for why some 5-year-old is the reason why that lesson didn't go well. Except that's one of the things I try. I don't deal with high school kids. I deal with K5 people. There is no way, as a grown man, I'm going to blame some 8-year-old kid for why my lesson didn't go well. That's just not what I'm going to do. Again, adults, if I'm in an adult learning situation, maybe Sally from accounting messed something up. But an 8-year-old kid, I mean, come on, fam. Like, really.
Sally.
Yeah, come on, fam. Anyway, any closing thoughts, Webbs?
Um, no, I think that's it. Like, keep it simple. Reflect at the end of the day. Um, have a status page. I think those are the big takeaways. And have empathy for students and families, and
Big facts.
hopefully your administrators will have a little empathy for you and what you're going through as well. We'll be here.
Yeah.
Give us a shout out.
By hook or crook,
If
we'll
you're
be
like,
here.
Webs, that was a trash idea. A Google Doc totally didn't work. Like,
And just for like full disclosure, we are going to like be building hopefully in the near future some just modules that we can just throw into, that are just going to be like more right brain creativity centered modules that you just take on demand and put them right into your Canvas instances and just be done with them. I'm putting together one right now for, I've showed many times, the first little activity my kids are going to do is build their own personal logo. I'm going to put together a module in Canvas very quickly that kind of just walks you through that. You just take it, put it inside your Canvas module, and just let it ride after that.
So I was actually thinking about that story I've shared that of a lesson I did with my students where they build the birdhouses from garbage, basically recycled materials, but really garbage. Um, and started. So I go running at Sunset Park a few days a week, and they have some really great posters as you run around the different parts of the park that talk about like the local wildlife and stuff like that. So I've been recording videos and taking photos, and I want to turn that project into a module that teachers can download.
Indeed. That's all we got tonight. So I'm gonna do the thing. Indeed. But probably shoot a couple more shows as this week as things warranted. Uh, I'm gonna be looking at the Twitters because the Twitters is gonna be ablaze tomorrow, homie. Twitter's gonna be
Yeah, we'll try
ablaze
to
tomorrow.
pick up on some of that
Oh,
and
indeed.
have some episodes. You can catch us on Twitter at Trust a Hoodlum. I'm at Weber's Words. Mike is at CHCLTE Teacher. We're on YouTube, The Intelligent Hoodlums Ed. We're on Facebook, The Intelligent Hoodlums. You can just Google us, The
We need
Intelligent
to
Hoodlums. Our
talk
website is the
later on this week
what?
about virtual cams too, because virtual cams are dope. And if you're going to be using Google Meet, using virtual cams is a better option than just the regular Google Meet thing. But we'll talk about that later on this week.
Yeah. All right, cool.
All right. God bless
Thanks,
America.
everybody.
Shout out to the Canadians.